Hello everybody once again. In continuing our series on things that make noise, I have a really cool vintage, very vintage noise-making device to show you guys today. This is a Sears early one, fire alarm, ionization type, early warning smoke detector. This is a very early smoke alarm made in 1977. I bought this on eBay, got it for about $40 shipped, which is a little bit of money, but a smoke alarm this old does not come along on eBay very often, so I consider it a decent price. Sears sold a ton of smoke detectors between the mid-70s and late 80s. They never made their own, they were always a rebrand of existing alarms. And it seemed every year they had them made by a different company, and they would go to one company and then come back to that company a few years later. And I think every year they always pretty much just choose if I had to guess, they just chose the lowest bidder on who was going to make their smoke alarms. Many of them were made by BRK, some were made by Firenetics Incorporated, a few were made by Gateway Scientific, Nalcor, and this one, which is the model 57002, is actually rare because this one was made by Cerberus Pyrotronics. Apparently Sears units made by Cerberus Pyrotronics are quite rare, so that I managed to snag this one is pretty darn cool. The reason I bought this was because I've been wanting to get an early BRK made smoke alarm. What I'd really love to have is a First Alert SA76RS, which is like the first Alert model that was sold widespread. And I bought this Sears unit because, based on the photos, I thought it was going to be a BRK made unit. And after I bought it on eBay, I posted pictures of it on the Smoke Alarms group on Facebook. And they said, hey, guess what? You've got a rare unit made by Cerberus Pyrotronics. So that's really, really cool. And so while this particular smoke alarm is very old, and it works perfectly, I'm not intent on keeping it. I think what I'd like to try to do is hopefully, and someone on the Facebook group has already hinted that they may be interested, I would like to trade this for a First Alert SA76RS if I can. So once I'm done making this video, I will be advertising that I'm interested in trading this guy. But for now, let's take a look at it. Now, for some reason, Sears just could not decide on a box design. Every single one of their smoke alarms was in a completely different style box, and this one's kind of odd because it's so minimalist. You know, some of the other ones, like the ones made by BRK or Firenetics, they had a bit more busy box design with more information on the front, but this is so simple and almost almost ominous in how it looks. This black box with this very 70s style rotated pastel colors. It's just very, very weird to me. Another weird thing is that they call it a fire alarm. They do call it smoke detector down here, but the primary tagline is fire alarm, which is very, very odd. Although not really incorrect, because ionization smoke alarms do, in general, only sense stuff that's already on fire versus stuff that's smoldering and not quite on fire yet. They also show an incorrect graphic here. They show one that has no test button on it. The earliest unit Sears sold had no test button, but this one does. And it also says up here, 9-volt battery powered smoke detector with test button. There's the top of the box. What we got on the side. Ionization type detector for early response in broad spectrum of fires. Not really true. Cordless installation convenience. Replacement battery readily available. Uses 9-volt alkaline battery with 1-year battery life. So this was kind of significant because the earliest smoke alarms did not use 9-volt batteries. The original batteries that the very first crop of smoke alarms used, up until about the mid or late 70s, were actually mercury batteries. They were cylindrical batteries about that big and maybe that long. And they contained, you know, some sort of mercury amalgam in them. And there were 3 different types that were used depending on what smoke alarm you bought. One type of mercury battery was 10.7 volts, another was, I think, 11.6, and then there was 12.6 or something like that. All of those batteries were banned by the end of the 1980s because obviously they contain mercury as you know, one of their raw ingredients. But that's what the earliest smoke alarms used. It wasn't until the mid 70s that they started making ones that took the 9-volt battery, which was not only safer but far, far cheaper. But that's what this one uses. What else do we have? Battery supervisory circuit electronically checks battery condition every minute of every day. Low battery warning signal sounds once a minute for approximately 30 days when battery is low. Loud 85 decibel alarm can be heard even through closed doors. This has a Kobishi CLB27 electromechanical horn. That is a device that we explored in an earlier installment of this series. I have one right next to me right here. This is what's inside this smoke alarm. Not a piezo horn like a modern smoke alarm, an electromechanical horn. And you can hear what they sound like in that previous video, but we'll also sound this thing in this video as well. Pleasing design matches any decor. I can't help but laugh at that. I mean, it's a pretty... The vast majority of smoke alarms that Sears ever sold all use this design, and I actually find it kind of ugly. I find it really ugly, actually, and that's part of the reason I want to trade this thing, even though it's rare. I just hate the design of these. I like the First Alert SA76RS much, much more. So that's why I'm hoping to trade this for one of those. Also because I just prefer the BRK made alarms. So both sides are the same. Oh, how could I forget the back? So the early one name, there in quotation marks, as was common to do in the 70s, that's what Sears called all of their smoke alarms. Of course, the purpose of that name being, you know, it sounds very quickly after a fire begins. Full 1-year warranty on smoke detector, not including batteries. This combustion products detector is not a substitute for insurance. You should obtain and maintain insurance on your home and property. Okay. Well, let's take everything out of the box here and see what we have. Okay, here's the goods. It came with the original manual, an advertisement for the remote signaling device. We'll take a look at both these pieces of documentation. The original mounting hardware, still sealed, and the original Mallory Duracell 9-volt battery, which is very corroded, reads no voltage, but yeah, that's super cool to see. So I actually don't believe this was ever used. I don't think it was ever installed, and I don't think a battery was ever even put in it. I think this is brand new. But here's the unit itself. I'm just not a fan of this, not a fan of how these Sears units look. I think it's kind of an ugly looking design compared to the First Alert SA76RS, but that's only my opinion. There are people who love these things, and of course Sears made so many unique models made by many different companies that some people try to collect them all, literally. I mentioned this was made by Cerberus Pyrotronics, which was sort of one of the smaller players in smoke alarms. In particular, this is a direct rebrand. I should say the circuit board inside here is lifted straight off of an existing Cerberus Pyrotronics model that they sold under their own name. And so this is a reskin of the Cerberus Pyrotronics Pyrolarm Guardian model FB1A. That's the actual model, and they just put a Sears specific cover on it. I like how the owner's manual also shows a completely different detector. I don't even know what that is. I'm not familiar with that cover design. Maybe it's one of these other units. The 57002 is this unit. The 57003 is this unit but walnut colored. That would be really cool to find. 57001 is a unit without a test button, so maybe that's made by another company. And I don't know what the 004 and 005 are, but you get the same manual for all of them. Let's start by looking at the manual. Let's see what's worth reading in there. The smoke detector is designed to sense the visible and invisible products of combustion created by a fire. It requires no adjustment, is self-contained, self-monitoring, and easily installed. It uses a tiny, harmless quantity of radioactive material to detect the products of combustion. Since most fire fatalities occur at night while victims are asleep, the primary location for a residential detector is in the hall just outside of the main bedroom area. This assures an alarm at the first sign of products of combustion accumulation near the bedroom area during the night. If you have more than one sleeping area, additional detectors should be installed near each one. For additional protection, detectors should be installed in other locations where fires might occur: at the top of the basement stairs, in separate studio or den, in family TV rooms, in a children's room, or master bedroom. And then you've got this chart with levels of protection. It is recommended that the detector be tested weekly. And then it actually has separate instructions for the particular model. So for the 57001, which has no test button, to test the unit, simply blow a small amount of smoke into the detector, and the alarm, a continuous blare, that's a funny noise or a funny way to describe it, will sound as soon as smoke reaches the detection chamber. The chamber should clear itself in about a minute, and the alarm will stop. But you can hasten this by fanning the unit gently to help clear the chamber of any remaining smoke. For my particular unit, press the external test button. A loud, penetrating sound indicates your detector is operational. So it's kind of funny, they didn't settle on how to describe the alarm itself. First they say a continuous blare, next they say a loud, penetrating sound. For the 004 and 005, which, oh yes, these are the models with the heat detector. Press external test button. A loud penetrating sound indicates your detector is operational. To verify the operation of the 135 degree Fahrenheit thermal device, the thermal detector should be activated by heat from a light bulb, hair dryer, or other suitable means. The alarm, a continuous blare, will sound as soon as the thermal device is activated by sufficient heat. The thermal detector will restore itself automatically after heat is removed. The 135 degree Fahrenheit thermal detector is an additional safeguard. The unit is virtually maintenance-free. The only exception may be in the case of a dusty atmosphere, and then from time to time a vacuum hose may be placed up to the detector opening to clear it of any dust. The detector will become more sensitive as large quantities of dust accumulate. This is true. It is to be noted that the vacuum cleaner airflow may momentarily alarm the detector while cleaning. Do not paint the detector housing. Painting clogs the slots and reduces the unit's effectiveness. I don't know why anybody would ever do that, but it's definitely a thing that happens for some reason. When the battery begins to weaken, it will power a warning signal, a short blast from the horn, and we will hear that low battery warning in this video, at 1 minute intervals for typically 30 days, minimum of 7 days. This signal is alerting you to the need for immediate battery replacement. And there's the exact battery that we got in the box with this one. The early one requires the use of any one of two specified 9-volt long-life alkaline batteries readily available wherever batteries are sold. These are the Duracell MN1604 or Sears 57017. No other batteries should be substituted, and the use of any other batteries will void warranty. Whew, that's pretty harsh. Battery life is 1 year under normal use, so they actually tell you to use an alkaline battery. And that's because in some rare instances, electromechanical horns, especially with the batteries of old, which obviously didn't have as much current capacity, in some rare instances, an electromechanical horn would not sound with a carbon zinc 9-volt battery. It just couldn't provide enough current to make the horn work, so that's why they told you to use an alkaline. And then here's a little brochure thingy for the Sears remote signaling device. Sounds a fire warning anywhere in your home. Sounds the alarm up to 100 feet from the smoke detector. It's portable, can be used from room to room. 6-foot cord plugs into standard 120 volt AC outlet. Attractive wood grain finish on sturdy plastic case, designed for tabletops or wall hanging. And yeah, it basically uses a radio signal. You'd have a transmitter attached to the smoke alarm itself, and then it would transmit a radio signal to this unit, which would receive that radio signal and also begin sounding. It instantly sounds the alarm up to 100 feet from the fire. Those are some eerily red lips on that lady. When your Sears smoke alarm sounds the alarm, will you be close enough to hear it? Yes. Yes, you will. It's a freaking Kobishi horn. You could be sound asleep, running the roaring vacuum cleaner, or off in some out-of-the-way room. The Sears smoke detector, teamed up with the safety and security features of the Sears remote signaling device, gives your family the added protection it needs. A single remote signaling device is capable of responding to the signal from every Sears smoke detector in your home. And no matter how many remote signaling devices you use, they can all respond to the signal from one Sears smoke detector. The Sears remote signaling device instantly responds to a special signal from the Sears smoke detector. When the detector senses smoke, it activates the remote signaling device alarm, wherever you have it, up to 100 feet from the detector. Your Sears remote signaling device can be used room to room, wherever there's a standard 120 volt AC outlet. Packed in a handsome, sturdy, wood grain finish plastic case, you can place your remote signaling device on a table or counter, or hang it on a wall. Every home should have the protection of a Sears smoke detector, and the added protection that only a Sears remote signaling device can provide. And they've got some pictures. And here's the unit itself. You can see an opening there for the horn. There's our test button. And this thing is big. Here it is next to a contemporary smoke alarm from the 90s. You can tell how much I love this thing. But yeah, it's a pretty chonkers unit. And let's go around the back here. Look at the label. There's our date code, 1977. And we have 0.8 microcuries of americium-241. So actually slightly less than many much newer smoke alarms. Continuous operation at high temperatures such as 120 degrees Fahrenheit reduces battery life. And there it actually does give you the Cerberus name, Cerberus Pyrotronics, who manufactured the unit. Made in USA. Alright, so let's take off the cover. So on these really early smoke alarms, the cover actually completely removes. It's not hinged. And here we are. Get a load of this. So there's our Kobishi horn. Now I said CLB27. I'm actually not sure if it's that or another model, because the CLB27 has pins on the bottom for the DC and AC hookups, but this horn only has the only has a physical attachment for the negative, which is the entire case. And then there's actually a red wire coming out of a little hole in the bottom for the positive. So this might not be a CLB27. I can't see any writing on the bottom to see if it has another model name on it. But, you know, you can tell just by looking at it, it's the exact same horn, just the electrical connections are different. But you can see it's got some stampings on it from the manufacturing, or not manufacturing, but probably the assembly process. Big ionization chamber compared to a newer BRK made unit. And if you look inside it, you can see inside this metal can is this copper mesh, which is kind of funny. You can just make out in the center inside there a little pellet of americium 241. And you can just see this thing is pretty solidly built. Big circuit board. There are no integrated circuits on here. Cerberus Pyrotronics actually made two versions of the FB1A. This is the earlier variant, and then there was a slightly later variant that actually had an integrated circuit. It's all discrete transistors. There's really no electronic brains in this thing. You can tell how old it is. Look, you've got that's probably a paper capacitor. And then the entire circuit board is covered in this epoxy, probably just to protect against static discharge. And then look at this, we actually have two trimmers on here. One of these is going to be a sensitivity adjustment that literally just adjusts the threshold for which the alarm sounds. A lot of early smoke alarms had that. But I'm not sure what the other trimmer would be. I have no idea. And then you can see the test button just grounds out the ionization chamber to cease the current flow that occurs inside the chamber and trigger the alarm. And then this thing is just built really well. You can see the battery leads here. They actually go to fast and bend terminals mounted to the PCB. And then there's actually another set of fast and bend terminals right here. This may be where the remote signaling device connected, but I'm not sure. But yeah, there you go. Quite the unit for sure. Well, now comes the time to actually test this thing. And I actually already have a pre-existing video that I made on my phone of testing this thing. I stuffed some blue tack in the horn and tested it. So let's take a look at that and hear what this thing sounds like and how well it works. Well, there you go. This thing works pretty darn well, and, you know, in my opinion, it works probably just as good as it ever would have worked when it was new 45 years ago. So yeah, that is pretty darn cool to see. Now, there's another thing, the low battery chirp. So I have a video of that too that I made for the Smoke Alarm Facebook group and for Twitter. And I used my variable voltage power supply for that. It starts chirping at about 7.2, 7.3 volts. So let's take a look at that and see what the low battery chirp sounds like on a smoke alarm with an electromechanical horn. There you go. You can see it's exactly like when a modern smoke alarm has a low battery. It's just using the electromechanical horn instead of a piezo horn. And the really impressive thing to me is that it'll actually keep working down to 4.2 volts. And what happens at 4.2 volts is that the smoke alarm itself is still working. Well, that's not fair to say. I didn't test whether or not it still detects smoke at that voltage, but the test button still works at that voltage, so at least it's still functioning that far. But what happens at 4.2 volts is that the horn stops working. There's not enough voltage for the horn to work anymore. It just makes a really faint rumbling noise. But the rest of the detector, at least as far as the test button circuitry, it still works. So that's actually pretty darn impressive. Well, there you go, guys. That is the Sears early one, model 957002 fire alarm from 1977, an early ionization smoke alarm that is still working just fine 45 years later. What a really neat early noise-making device. Really cool vintage smoke detector. And as I said in the beginning of this video, I am not committed to keeping this. I'm just not a fan of the Sears design. I would really like to trade this for a First Alert SA76 RS. So, you know, if anybody has one, might be interested in a trade, you can contact me, Twitter or email or comment, whatever. But I'm hoping I might find someone on the Facebook group who wants to trade me as well. But regardless, it itself is a really, really cool unit, and I hope you enjoyed exploring it with me. So I thank you guys for watching. A big thanks to my Patreon supporters. Their support affords me the ability to go on eBay and buy something stupid like this for $40 just to parade it in a crappy YouTube video for you guys. So I really thank them for their support. And I thank everyone else for watching. I have one more smoke alarm to show you guys in a future installment on our series of things that make noise. It's a BRK made unit, First Alert branded actually. It's from the 90s again, but it's a very uncommon model. And that also works fine. I also got it in the box and I don't think it was ever used, and I'm really excited to show you guys that one. That is one that I am keeping. So I'll show you guys that one in the near future. So thank you, and I will see you guys in the next video.